Good morning on this May 31st, 2022. The time is 6:39 a.m. and welcome to Early in the AM with Isha. It's nice hearing from you. You haven't contacted me in a while for a word, so I've kind of been absent. I think it's been a little, almost a month since I've talked to you last. Had a birthday that came and passed, some other things happening in the world, and I just want to touch bases with some type of public platform so I can express how I feel. Because I usually don't voice myself that way. I guess I'm so used to waiting till the conversation comes to the dinner table. Until a group gathering of friends, 2 or 3 friends, ends up binding you to a living room for the evening. And then a conversation comes up. And it usually is a heated thing or interesting thing between the voices there. And it kind of never really leaves that space. It's not examined by public eyes and seen from an adjacent point where you can sit down and say, hey, that's a valid point. Or, hey, that's misguided. Or, I wish I would have said that, but I'm not really saying that. I'm saying this. Yeah. So, well, first, I'm just gonna, speak the obvious about the resurgence of mass shootings. We've kind of been on a hiatus for a while, and these things have kind of resurfaced. Uh, there was a racial attack being confined to the status of a hate crime in Buffalo, New York, and an 18-year-old white supremacist premeditated to kill black people in their environment. And he succeeded at going to a grocery store with predominantly black senior citizens shopped. And the average age of the people, of the persons he killed, were, 55 and older, with the exception of one who was, I think he was 32. But he killed grandmothers and grandfathers, great uncles and great aunts. These people were in their 80s and 70s, and it was just, shopping during a time where, the elderly shop. They shop, midweek, early morning hours. And recently, now this one had me in tears for a couple of days. This one was more genocide related. Where we have another 18-year-old in Texas, Uvalde, Texas. And he was, Spanish origin. And he went into an elementary school, and I can't think about it. It brings up Sandy Hook Elementary in Newtown from December 12th in 2012, 2014. That one itself is another 18-year-old. And what his actions did to those babies and their teachers. I don't know. I can't, because in my mind's eye, I see a father of one of those kids, and he's so devastated. He's at like the bottom of his spine, and his mind is empty, his soul is empty, and it's like total despair and devastation, and his body is just expelling heat like flames, and he's just so helpless in his role as a father. Like, he can't believe he wasn't there to protect him. You know what I mean? And that in itself, like, that picture comes up, and I can hear him crying. Even in his silence, I can hear him crying. That, I think, is the most painful, the most hysterical, next to the mother of that child. The very silence and devastation, then the very height of unbearable devastation in the same place. These things are so much so properties of themselves. You have almost like a suicide bombing, someone of the same cloth, of the same race, of the same ethnicity, with ultimate hate in mind, and explodes from within. Almost like not a suicide bomber, but those instances where it's coming from within and you don't see it coming. And then in those instances, you're just as blind as someone who comes from the outside of the community, and comes in, because there's such a parameter of blind spots. You can't see it coming. You can only navigate what you've been through. And then it happens again, even though it's happened before. And then you have a new spot to look from. But that doesn't mean all the other blind spots are found. That's what makes it scary. I'm just relishing in that, because the pain came and is gone. I found myself being more in touch with those sensitivities, more interested, more invested in it. Because being a bus driver, those parts of me were open doors. There was the doors the kids opened to get into the van, or the adults, that when I had to open the door to let them out, that I was never really, those places within weren't really accessible because I was trying to be professional. But in the realization of my profession, it's just a desensitization, me breaking down those things that used to have me in tears when I was younger. I realized that the only reason I was a bus driver was because I failed at being a college student. I failed to obtain a college degree. My entire profession as a bus driver was based on the failure to obtain a degree. And I got to a point within where someone trusted me enough on my own volition to be responsible, that in my subconscious, I pulled up those failures and I started addressing them. And one of those was about the college degree. And it's so interesting enough that as soon as I obtained my college degree, as soon as it came down to that last week and I was sick as a dog, I probably had COVID. This is like December of 2019. Sicker than I had been in years. I was on antibiotics and everything. And I had 3 research papers due that week, 2 for the same class. My only thing was they didn't require that much from me. I had been for the past 3 weeks to a month, hammering down on my studying and my research and, the notes. And, I always say that the best research papers come from over-preparing. Like, if you have to write, if your teacher is looking for a 5-page paper, you should always have minimum 10 pages of notes to pull from. And, let me get this out. And, yeah, one of my papers ended up being over 20 pages. The other 2 were around 10 each. These are research papers with, you had to have a minimum of 20 resources and, all the stuff that comes with college papers. So anyway, I literally finished school. My last day when I handed in everything was December 19th. This is like, right around Christmas vacation, right before we jump into 2020. And, I completed. Mind you, I was telling myself, you got this degree now, you can switch fields. And I didn't think that, not even a month or so after I got my college degree, I literally lost my job. Like, literally, COVID came in and just snatched the job from under my feet. And it didn't occur to me at the time, what was happening in my life, like this huge transition was coming in. And it seemed like, because I got my degree in public administration, but that's for government work, and at the same time, the government has shut down. So no one was really getting hired at this time. So it's like I, got the rug pulled up from up under me, and then there was like no prospect of jumping into the new thing, not for a while. So it's been over 2 years now. things are opening and the ball is rolling again. And I'm applying for these positions. But then I realized that, after 2 years after I've left ECS, that entitled, not that entitled, but that position, that profession is kind of out of my system. And then I look back on that, what I said earlier, that the only reason I was a bus driver is because I failed being a college student and graduating. But that's not there anymore. And it's so weird that as soon as that truth became a reality, became a falsehood, that I was no longer a failed college graduate. I am a college graduate. It's like the bus driver job just disintegrated. It was just like, oh, this is the truth. Bye. And it just, it just said goodbye to, 20 plus years in one field. And I look at it, I was like, wow. I was like, I literally subconsciously pulled up that failure, addressed it, fixed it. And then it totally took out my 20 years of being a bus driver. It just like killed my job. And being a bus driver, which I never really talked about, I was very quiet. I'm not much of a social bus driver, I would say. My mom definitely was. She was the social butterfly But people would just, catch her bus just to talk to her, even though that's not even where they were going. People would get on her bus and talk to her for like 3 trips around, for like 2 or 3 hours, and then get off her bus and catch another bus and go home. I never really had that. There's a couple of people who, you say hi to them, and then they just, magnet to the seat next to the driver, and they talk to the driver. I always have, little tidbits of conversation, but I never really get too much into anything. I'm always on a wary that public lookout for, for safety reasons or whatever. But being a bus driver it forced me to sit still. It forced me to sit still, and it forced me to realize the heaviness of what control is. Being a bus, people don't realize the danger of public transportation. This human is in control of a massively large, heavy vehicle, with people coming in and out of it on public transportation, in traffic, under, whatever's the culture or the nature of traveling at the time. Whether it's traffic and heavy vehicles on the road and lots of, being stuck in one situation, whatever the temperature is, hot outside, it's cold. If the temperature controls even work in the bus. I've worked on buses where the heat didn't work so good. And opening the door just made the bus even colder and just shivering in that front seat. I worked in buses where the AC didn't work at all. And the heat coming off the engine made me 10 degrees hotter than everybody else on the rest of the bus. Raining, and you couldn't close the window, just rain just splattering it all over you. Empty trips where it's just me driving alone, and the silence would get so heavy. Silence on a heavy, rackety vehicle, it becomes sweltering, it's splintering. Your body starts you can hear the silence echo off the metal, and it almost becomes painful. And then you end up talking because you don't want to hear it. And I'm talking to myself, and I'm singing out loud. And then I find myself doing it when there's 2 or 3 people on the bus, and they're not making any noise. I kind of forget they're there until they, ring the buzzer to get off. And I start singing to myself because I'm trying to get that metal silence out of my head. And then I'm hearing, "Is that you up there?" And then professionalism running out the window. You're, not maintaining the posture under the uniform, so to speak.